The question is, should everybody do intermittent fasting? So the short answer is absolutely yes. Everybody needs to do intermittent fasting because it's a matter of life and death, literally. And so I'm going to show you today why it's vitally important that everybody do intermittent fasting. In fact, for those of you who may be thinking, oh no, I don't want to do intermittent fasting, it's not healthy for me. Actually, you're already doing intermittent fasting. Every time you sleep, you are fasting. That is intermittent, right? Now, there's different types of intermittent fasting, and we'll go over that in future podcasts. But for today, I'm going to show you why it's vital for your health. If you're suffering with some type of chronic degenerative disorder, some chronic symptom, some chronic health issue, it doesn't matter. If you have any type of health issue, you need to intermittent fast. It is vital. It is not an option. It is a requirement. So let me show you why. Let me show you the science behind why everybody should intermittent fast. Let's start with a protein complex that maybe you've never heard of. I won't get too medical scientific terminology because that's not the point. The point is not to learn these medical terminology. The point is to understand why you need to do the things that you need to do in order to stay healthy and actually increase your longevity and increase your quality of life. So this protein complex, there's a protein complex called mTOR, okay? mTOR, it's an intracellular protein complex. What do you need to know about it? It's a protein enzyme. That's what you need to know. All of our bodies are made of protein, and an enzyme is also in a protein. An enzyme is a protein that allows all chemical reactions to occur. Okay, it facilitates it. Now, this specific one is called mTOR, and it has a very important function, the function of regulating maintenance of homeostasis. What does that actually mean? Homeostasis means our bodies are in balance. That's another way of saying it. Another terminology you might hear is equilibrium. So, in order for our bodies to stay alive and function every day, we are in constant homeostasis. It's fluctuating, but we're in homeostasis, we're balanced, we're in equilibrium. Okay. This enzyme, mTOR, this protein complex, is one of the big players in making sure that our bodies don't go into chaos, our cells don't go into chaos, that they are in homeostasis, that they are balanced. Okay. And so, two main functions of this maintenance of homeostasis, one is metabolism. So, it's a breaking down of food, absorbing of food. And the other one is autophagy. Okay, autophagy, so we're going to get into later, but that is the self-cleaning program that our bodies, every single cell in our body has this program. It's a self-cleaning program, and it's called autophagy. Okay, now how does it, how is this homeostasis? What affects this homeostasis? And therefore, what affects metabolism? What affects autophagy, right? Well, the availability of amino acids, the availability of growth factors, ATP, which is energy. Growth factors are what help us grow. Growth factors, right? Grow. And oxygen, energy, right? Oxygen, ATP, energy, survival. Oxygen is the number one nutrient our body needs. Without oxygen, every cell would die. Okay. So this specific protein complex helps us utilize these nutrients in order to metabolize or stimulate, or the opposite, to self-clean. Okay, so let's go into more detail. How do we active? So let's first, before we how we activate it, let's understand. So this protein complex is affected by this amino acids, growth factors, ATP, oxygen. What does that actually mean? So when food or nutrient is plentiful, okay, so food and nutrients, we're talking about this. When these are plentiful, this is what happens. It activates this mTOR protein complex. Now, what happens when the mTOR protein complex is activated? Well, your cells start to go into growth mode, okay? You start producing new proteins. Amino acids are just building blocks of proteins. So if you have a lot of amino acids available to your cells, then it's going to activate this mTOR protein complex, and you're going to build more proteins because you have the building blocks. You're going to have cell division. You're going to have reproduction. Okay. Now, when food is scarce, so let's say you're not eating as much and you don't have the nutrients above here, the amino acids, the growth factors, ATP, and oxygen, what happens there? Well, this mTOR protein complex actually gets suppressed. Okay. It gets suppressed. Now, when it's suppressed, what happens? Well, your cells enter something called a recycling mode. They start to recycle things. Okay. So they break down cellular components, they clean your house. Cell division and growths actually slow down or stop, and reproduction is put on hold to conserve energy. Okay. And this is called autophagy, right? Over here, I should write metabolism. So when the mTOR is activated, you have metabolism. When the mTOR is suppressed, you have autophagy, self-cleaning. Okay. So the mTOR, it kind of acts like a general contractor of our cells. So if you're familiar with like home building, right, real estate or home building, the general contractors kind of supervise and initiate actions. That's what the mTOR protein does. It's a general contractor, and it triggers a cascade of reactions. Okay, so why is this so important? And in regards to intermittent fasting, we're going to get to that, right? Now, this mTOR, if we come back to this, cells in growth mode, producing new proteins. What is cell division? If you have too much food, right? Like you're overeating, which is a big problem here in the US and also in Western civilized countries. We have abundance of things, abundance of food everywhere. Then we tend to overeat. And when we overeat, we activate this mTOR protein and it causes cell division. What disease do you know is a I would say it is correlated to rapid cell division? Cancer. Exactly. So if you activate mTOR, your mTOR protein complex frequently, you are breeding, you are putting your body in a environment ready for cancer growth. Okay, because it's cell division and also it's cell growth. Tumors, cancer cells, what happens is we have all this debris, every cellular reaction in our body. When we do any type of reaction in our body, we have to, every cell eliminates waste. Now, if that waste is not properly disposed of, it clumps together and it accumulates. When it accumulates, it becomes a tumor. Those all are activated by the mTOR. Okay, because if you the mTOR when it's activated, there's no cleaning going on. It is just build, 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 build. There's no cleaning. Okay. So imagine if you like, this is an example, like if you've heard of hoarders, people who just buy stuff and they don't throw things away. And then when you go into their house, it is filled with stuff. Right. And eventually, some people, because it becomes so insanitary, it's so unsafe health wise, they actually die from the disease from hoarding. That's what's happening when you only activate this mTOR. Okay. You are just consuming, consuming, consuming. You're just putting stuff into your home and you're not dumping the trash. You're eating stuff and you just dump it in one corner of your house, but you're not really getting rid of it out of your house. That is what's happened when you activate the mTOR. Now, the opposite, if you suppress it, right, then you start throwing out the trash. You start cleaning your house. Well, guess what? Your house will start to look spick and span. It will look super clean, right? That is the same thing with our cells. If we do not clean our cells, that is just breeding for chronic degenerative diseases. It can be any type of autoimmune disease, like many people these days are having Hashimoto's, autoimmune to the thyroid, Hashimoto's or Graves. Mostly Hashimoto's is the problem. Hypothyroid, that is a problem of this. This causes all of those, especially neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and so forth, right? So it's super important that we do things to suppress this protein so that our bodies go into a recycling and self-cleaning mode. Okay, because if it doesn't, then we are going to have all types of diseases, right? So can you see why everybody needs to suppress the mTOR? Okay, but let's talk about autophagy. What is autophagy? What happens when autophagy? You've probably heard when you intermittent fast or you fast, right? It stimulates something called autophagy, which is these things right here, the self-cleaning. Now, what exactly goes on? Well, the cells stop producing new proteins. It actually breaks down old proteins and other cellular structures into amino acids. So what it does when you suppress this mTOR protein right here, it activates autophagy. And when autophagy is activated, self-cleaning, it actually goes around, you activate your cells that go around and say, hey, which of these cells are old or they're dysfunctioning, they're not functioning properly, then we need to dismantle them and reuse their parts. Okay. See, they use the scavenged material to build new ones, aka cellular recycling. Okay. So they don't need to produce new parts. They just need to go and recycle. So they go and look at these, like say, it's like a renovation, people who flip homes, they go into buy this home that is just terrible condition and they just renovate it, right? They don't just demolish the whole home. They actually look at the home and see what they can use, right? And keep a lot of times a lot of structures is good. They keep the structure, they keep the foundation, right? They don't just, take away everything. That's the same thing with ourselves. They look at all these, underperforming cells and see which parts can we keep and which parts do we have to get rid of. Okay. And so it cleans out accumulated junk in the cell and repurpose it or disposing it. Okay. So it's not like our cells are going to Home Depot every day and picking up new supplies and building a house from scratch. No, it's not. Okay. Now, so autophagy is essential to life. If it shuts down completely, our cells die. This is why everybody needs to intermittent fast, okay? Because if you do not stimulate autophagy, your cells will die, and then eventually you will die, okay? So remember, autophagy is self-cleaning. You always need to clean, right? Same thing. If you're just constantly eating and you do not poop and you don't pee, so that means you're not eliminating, right? You accumulate that poop and pee in your body, you're gonna die pretty soon, right? Common sense. Autophagy is what helps us poop and pee and sweat, which is the way we eliminate toxins. So what happens when you accumulate these trash and toxins, these cellular protein aggregates? So all of these proteins, if they're not broken down, these malfunctioning ones, the ones are not performing and they're getting old and decrepit, if they're not broken down, they clump together. They form cancer, right? Not only do they do that, they also cause Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and other neurodegenerative diseases. This is the cause. This is the cause of these problems. Okay. If we're talking about the cause in a cellular level, right? This is the cause. And guess what? It can be prevented just by intermittent fasting. Okay. So when you suppress the mTOR protein complex, it activates autophagy, and that does three things. Okay. Well, not just three things. How do we suppress the mTOR and therefore activate autophagy? There's three main ways, right? And all these three ways do not require you to take a pill, right? It doesn't matter if it's a supplement. None of these require you to take a pill. So that's the thing about this podcast. We're only going to present to you, fixes that you can do at home for your own health. So if you are struggling with any type of these chronic disorders, you can do these three things and it will help. I cannot say that it will reverse it, right? Because I don't know your condition. Does it have the potential to? Maybe, I don't know. Okay. But it can definitely help. Right. So the number one strategy to suppress the mTOR protein and activate autophagy is intermittent fasting. Number two is caloric restriction diet or a low protein diet. And number three is exercise. And I can go into further podcasts into all three categories about how to do it. Okay, how to do it to actually help you stimulate autophagy, suppress this mTOR so that you can live a longer life and a higher quality of life, higher quality, longer life. Let me know in the comments below which one you want me to do a deeper dive and a step-by-step on how to execute it, okay? But this podcast is just letting you know that everybody absolutely needs to do intermittent fasting, because if you don't, then you will not stimulate autophagy, and your cells will start to die, and then your organs will start to dysfunction, and then eventually you will see lots of massive problems, okay? So again, let me know in the comments below if you want me to elaborate on any of the topics any of the information that I presented above. And number two, let me know which of these strategies, or if all of them, if you want me to go deep dive in all three of them, I will. Okay. And I'll tell you exactly what to do. Peace.